Hi, and welcome to another episode of NCBA's Coffee Break. I'm Nathan Willner. I'm your host for today's cup of coffee. And as part of our Getting to Know Your NCBA Leaders series, we are excited to have with us a member of NCBA's Board of Directors, Sarena Gaylor, who's going to tell us how it's been as being part of NCAA's board and what got her to this point. So, Serena, welcome to NCBA's Coffee Break.
Hey Nathan, thanks for having me.
Of course, and thanks for doing this. So let's just get right to it. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and let them know where you're located, and then we'll get into some details.
Sure. I am Sarena Gaylor. I am a member of Couch Lambert, which is headquartered in Metairie, Louisiana, so very close to New Orleans. I've been practicing for 12 years, always with the firm, and we are currently in 9 states and have about 20 plus attorneys.
Hey, so very much part of the creditors' rights legal industry. So let's just get right to it. So why is serving as an NCBA leader such an important part of your professional life, and how does it affect your practice of law?
Well, like I said, I've been in the creditors' rights space ever since I got out of law school. And so I've, held several different positions within the firm before becoming an owner. And now that I'm at this level, I think I bring a unique perspective to the board just because I'm not really a lawyer, as I like to tell people. I practiced for a few years, but then I really went into the compliance world. That's kind of where my passion is, and also operations. And so when I first started getting involved with NCBA outside of going to Connect and the conferences, of course, what I loved about it was the community and all the help that we were bouncing ideas off of one another, particularly when the CFV really started ramping up, probably in 2015, 2016, and all of the clients started asking us, well, what are you doing to track complaints? What are you doing for validations? Are you documenting it? Are you doing all these things? And so because of that, it really got me engaged with NCBA. And now in my role as an owner, I just think, being able to bring up some issues to the board and just being a voice for the other firms is really what's important to me. And I think it can make an impact in that manner.
Yeah, so I think you raised a really great point. Is you maybe not see yourself as a traditional attorney or what people think is an attorney. So what kind of drew you to the creditors' rights world? Like, what's your story? What's your backstory? Like, how did you find this space and why is it rewarding?
So creditors' rights definitely found me. I think a lot of people know this, but I never intended to be an attorney. When I was in undergrad, I thought I was going to be a news broadcaster or a doctor. So two very different things. But I don't like sick people. And, I ended up going the legal route just because my mother said, you have to do something after college. So I went to law school. I had a family friend who worked at the time, Couch Convil and Blit. And so they recruited me. And when I started clerking, I realized this is not a traditional law firm. I like the space. There's so many opportunities within the space. You can do, accounting, compliance, auditing. If you wanted to do law, you could do law. So there were just a lot of areas that I could see myself doing that would help having a legal background, but wasn't necessary to be, either licensed in multiple states or a state, or even to, complete law school if I didn't feel like it.
So um, what I'm hearing is that this practice area has so many different facets to it. Um, you know, is your firm in just one state? Is it in multiple states? And um, how long have you been involved with NCBA generally and your firm? Have they been a member all along?
Yes. So definitely before I was a member of the firm there. the firm was part of the NCBA. We are actively in 9 states currently with 20 attorneys, like I mentioned. And, we, even though I'm not an attorney, I am barred in multiple states, and I do keep up with all the legal procedures and laws across those states.
And I'm sure you'll agree that NCBA is the place to get relevant education and have those conversations. So, so in a general sense, what was the best advice you've ever received as an attorney?
For me, it was, and this is kind of like a life motto, it's focus what's in your control, and don't get overwhelmed with those items that aren't in your control. You can only do so much. And, especially in our industry, there's so much pressure coming from external factors, whether it's on the collection side, right? What's going on in the economy, or from a client perspective, or they're under certain regulations that we're not necessarily having to deal with. But it's looking at what can I and what can our firm do, and just focusing on hitting those finish lines, not worrying about, okay, well, the economy's not doing well. I can't go fix that, right? I, as an individual, or even as this network, we can't go out and do any one thing to increase, the ability for a consumer to pay. So don't worry about it. I can sleep at night knowing that whatever I set my goals to, as long as I accomplish those or have a path forward on those, then I can sleep well.
Well, so that brings me, this is a question I want to ask all of NCBA leaders that I'm having this coffee break interview with is, how has AI changed the way your firm operates?
Well, first and foremost, it's another area of expertise that we're required to, join. So it's it's helped propel our firm. There's obviously so many options out there to, one, reduce, the workload of our employees, or to even replace that employee. Two, a robot can do things much more efficiently and typically better than what a human can do, because you're not going to have those errors. But on the flip side, it has taken a lot of resource, a lot of high level resource, particularly in just understanding the risks and, what should we use AI for? What shouldn't we use it for? How's that going to impact the revenue? How's it going to impact from like an HR standpoint? It touches so many parts of the business that, it, for me personally, I'm spending a lot of time getting education, yes, through NCBA, of course. But I think it's all like a learning curve for all of us. So as I mentioned earlier, the community that I felt with when all the CFPB requirements started coming down, I'm seeing that again with the AI use, and just the increase in technology. And so I think AI is great when used properly. I am probably, like most people who are watching this, pretty hesitant as to how much we're utilizing it right now, but I do think that we will be able to propel the industry forward. Hopefully reduce the number of errors that we're seeing, and protect not only the firms but our individual attorneys by utilizing AI.
So we're getting towards the end of our coffee break episode, and one of the highlights of my past year was visiting law schools with you and doing that outreach. So maybe we can round out this conversation by closing it out a little bit about that program, and what advice would you give a third year law student?
I also love this new program, and I hope a lot of people start joining us in this endeavor. But reaching out to the law firms, getting them to either go back to maybe where they went to school, or just exploring a law school that's near them geographically, is really what's going to make this successful. But we've met with a lot of students food gets them there, right? And so when you're in law school, you really don't know what being a lawyer really entails. Of course, you have clerkships, but being in a lawyer seat, they don't teach you how to be a lawyer. In law school, they teach you kind of like the rules and kind of what it's supposed to be like. But getting out to the students, getting them information about our industry, because you also don't hear about creditors' rights, really. At least I didn't when I was in law school. It's a great opportunity to network. I've already had 2 students from those visits reach out to me and ask for more information about clerkship or mentorships, even if they aren't coming on board. It also sets us up for potentially hiring them whenever they do graduate, which I know is difficult currently for most of the firms to get really good, first year students out. So advice that I would give to a 3L is don't focus on the job necessarily, or like the prestige that you think is going to come from maybe working at, a national firm. What's more important is obviously, 1, passing the bar, but 2, finding the right fit for your personality and your lifestyle. I, of course, with my background and my lack of desire to be a traditional practicing attorney, I would not have done well at one of those big firms. While I like the idea of it, it sounded great. I like being corporate, wearing a nice tie and, suit, and going to court. It just would not have worked for me. The hours, well, I mean, while we work long hours, there's just a little bit of, it's a different vibe. I'm very comfortable in my office. I have always felt very comfortable. I've never had any issues, going to a superior, and also, just going to the conferences. Everyone that I've met in this industry is similar. So I wouldn't have found, my fit here if I didn't just take the opportunity that was handed to me. I didn't stress about, not making 6 figures right out of law school. I think it's just more about finding what fits for you and not, again, letting like the external distractions or the influencers, right? Anything that you see on TV or hear, it's not always pretty on the other side. It's just what's being shown to you. So that's the advice for the
Well,
3.
well, that's great advice, and really what I'm hearing is you got to follow your passion. And the creditors' rights world has so many different facets for attorneys. If courtroom litigation isn't your thing, there's all kinds of research and legal theories and concepts where you can, get your hands dirty, so to speak, in really complicated legal issues. So with that, we've come to the end of our cup of coffee, and hopefully, Sarena, you'll come back to another uh, episode where we can talk a little bit more about what goes on in your world of creditors' rights. And thank you so much for your service to NCBA. It is so appreciated. And with that, um, we will wish our listeners a good day. And so thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan.